Today is Tuesday, December 8th, 2020. Coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Civil rights leaders reach out to Cobb County commissioners in Georgia to question the removal of polling places in advance of the January 5th runoff. We'll talk about that as well as talk with a spokesman from the Warnock campaign. Also, folks, today the Supreme Court has denied the latest legal challenge by Donald Trump to throw out the results in Pennsylvania. Loser.com, Donald Trump continues to lose in federal court. Joe Biden announces his COVID response team today, as well as his health team. We'll tell you about the African-American woman who has been chosen. Also, on today's show, Politico is reporting that Congresswoman Marcia Fudge of Ohio has been chosen by Biden to be Secretary for Housing and Urban Development. We'll tell you what that means for African-Americans. Also, history is being made at MSNBC, where Rashida Jones becomes the first African-American to lead a major news network. In Tennessee, Brandon Jones is waiting to be executed for his role in a murder, even though 5 of the jurors who sentenced him say his life should be spared. We'll have those details and talk about evil. Donald Trump is looking to execute 5 folks before he leaves the White House. Why are they in a rush to kill people? Also, COVID vaccines have begun in the UK. 2 black doctors, who we often feature here in Roland Martin Unfiltered, announced they are going to actually take the vaccine and will provide updates to all of us about how that goes. Also, Amazon pulls a doll off their website that describes a black doll's hair as colored, dirty braids. And celebrity Shell Huda is joins us for our Black Business segment to introduce her new spice line. It is time to bring the funk. I'm Roland Martin Unfiltered. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the biz, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, roll, y'all. It's Roland Martin, yeah. Rolling with Roland now. He's funk, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now. Martin!
In Georgia, all eyes on the nation are on that particular state, and folks, already Republicans are playing shenanigans when it comes to voting. Cobb County has announced that they will eliminate over half of the county's early voting locations. Being that many of these locations are in Black and Latino communities, the move will disproportionately affect people of color. Several groups, including the NAACP and the Southern Poverty Law Center, Black Voters Matter, and the ACLU of Georgia, sent a letter to the Cobb County Board of Commissioners and Cobb County Board of Elections and Registration to express their concerns. The letter stressed the importance of early voting accessibility, stating that advanced voting opportunities are vital to ensuring voters can safely, securely, and freely participate in our democracy. The COVID-19 pandemic, which is ravaging the nation, has had extremely harsh effects in communities of color, especially African Americans. And so what they said is that, again, they say it is an untenable option for many voters. Now, activists are hoping Cobb County election officials are going to reverse their decision. Cobb made the decision, they said, because due to the drawn-out proceedings of the November 3rd election, because of also the holidays, they don't have the additional personnel needed to have those locations open. But there was a significant turnaround in Cobb County this year going for Joe Biden over Donald Trump. Cobb County also is the 3rd most populous county. Listen to me clearly. The 3rd most populous county in the state. And so voting rights advocates say this is an attempt to improve the chances of Kelly Loeffler as well as David Perdue in their battle against John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock. Ain't that grand? Folks, do we have our guest ready? Let me know, please, to talk about this here. This is a huge deal. I do want to bring in my panel as well. Michael Imhotep hosts the African History Network show. Candace Kelly, legal analyst, and Rena Shaw, the Lincoln Project Women's Coalition. We're going to talk to, in a second, to the spokesman for the Warnock campaign about this very issue. I want to go to you first, Michael, and that is this here. Again, the reason we have problems is because of this goes back to Shelby v. Holder decision. The U.S. Supreme Court determined that it was unconstitutional, the whole issue of preclearance. All right, gutting that particular section. Republicans have refused to fix that. As a result, since that decision, Republican-led states have been rushing to put in voter suppression. If Shelby v. Holder had not been ruled, if the Voting Rights Act was still intact, then they would have had to get permission from the Department of Justice to make one of these moves. This is one of those lasting impacts of that Supreme Court decision.
Absolutely, Roland, and thanks for once again for having me on. So Shelby County versus Holder is extremely important. 2013 U.S. Supreme Court case. And when I speak across the country prior to COVID, I would ask many African Americans about that court case, U.S. Supreme Court case, and they didn't know about it. You got to go back to 2012 presidential election. That preceded 2013, and there was a record number of the turnout percentage-wise of African Americans voting in that 2012 presidential election that President Obama was on the ballot was a record number. 66.6% of African Americans registered to vote voted. And based upon my research, that was the first time the percentage of African Americans voting was higher than the percentage of white people voting. Shelby County versus Holder was a backlash to that. And what happens is, Roland, is that because many of our people don't understand history, we don't understand these cycles of backlash that take place, okay? Whether we talk about the end of Reconstruction, whether we talk about the end of the Second Reconstruction, and Richard Nixon being elected in 1968, running on the platform of law and order, which was a backlash to the Black Power movement, the Civil Rights movement, all of that. So right after Shelby County versus Holder, you had all these new states that started coming out with new voter ID laws. And then this impacted the 2016 presidential campaign, where there were 868 fewer polling places. We're not, a lot of people, you connect the dots, but a lot of our people don't know that these dots exist to connect them. Because of Shelby County versus Holder, U.S. Supreme Court case 2013, and you had these Republican-led states that started shutting down these polling places because they didn't have to get clearance from a federal judge. Ari Berman, who wrote the article that you are going to talk about from Mother Jones, Ari Berman wrote a series of articles for The Nation during the 2016 presidential election dealing with this, and he has one that talks about how there were 868 fewer polling places. Today is somewhere around 1,600, 1,700 fewer polling places. So we have to understand how all these dots are connected. And lastly, if the African-American vote did not matter, we have to ask ourselves, why do people work so hard to suppress our vote? Why are they going to the U.S. Supreme Court? Why are they shutting down all these polling places, many of them in African-American and Hispanic, largely populated communities? So we have to understand this history and understand anytime you have periods of time of perceived advances by African-Americans, there's always a white backlash. Yeah. We got to understand that history to be able to defend and block against that backlash.
Candace, again, Cobb County says we simply don't have the staff. Are you buying that?
I am not buying that. And neither is LaTosha Brown of Black Voters Matter. And I want to quote her by saying there's one thing that you can counter Republicans for, and that is being racist and voter suppression. And they have stepped up and they have risen to the occasion. And so in this situation, we see that the machine continues to work to make sure that the numbers of Black folks cannot get to the polls. I mean, if we look at the overarching, just everything that's going on, from what Donald Trump is doing on down, this is really kind of like an overthrowing of the government. If we look at what that means, we're looking at people who don't want certain people to be in place. And that's exactly what Donald Trump is doing. And all the way down, all the Republicans in Georgia are working under the same kind of premise that Donald Trump is working on. And that's what we are seeing here. But as LaTosha Brown said, and as everybody has said who's been working on the ground in order to make sure that these places aren't closed, they are not having it. They are going to work. They are in the trenches. They are working right now. This is something that wasn't a surprise. So they already have their plan B in action.
Rena, what's interesting is that DeKalb County, they're actually expanding polling locations for the runoff election. Cobb County also, Republicans, that is considered a Republican county. They had a 4-1 majority. That lead has shrunk. I think it's now down to 3-2. And so there's no doubt in my mind you're seeing the impact. And for them to shut down one of the early voting locations in a black neighborhood, we know what that's all about.
Look, I think we should talk about the facts here because we can wax on all day about what this really means for communities of color and particularly Black Georgians and how this is really disenfranchisement at its sickest, most really, really bottom of the barrel type of actions from elected officials there. But we, again, talking about the facts, turnout is everything. That's what this is all about, this runoff election. And we look at history and we see that Black voters in Georgia haven't turned out in high rates. But this is the year that could be different because of the work of people like Stacey Abrams. She did the work in groups like Fair Fight, Black Voters Matter, New Georgia Project. Lots of African Americans were fired up after Stacey Abrams lost, and they've done the work. It shows it showed in the general election. So this is going to make a dent again. This work is going to be impactful. It's going to be tough. This is an uphill battle, no doubt. But in the last 4 years, there's been a huge increase in Georgia registered voters in general. So when we look at the GOP, I see one thing happening here. And I think the GOP, frankly, at the Georgia level right now is very much sabotaging itself as well. Trump is doing the Georgia GOP no favors. However, you look at Perdue and Loeffler, and they're calling on the Georgia Secretary of State, Raffensperger, who wrote the op-ed saying that he went out and he supported Trump. He and his family, they voted for Trump. After doing what he did, he suffered the repercussions that Republicans like me suffered long ago. When you fall out of line, it seems like the mob is coming for you. He's had death threats and the most vile things said about his wife. But again, Perdue and Loeffler, are really talking about Raffensperger, and they're calling on him to resign. I think that's a little bit of a sabotage technique. And then they're talking about Trump's lawyers hijacking their campaigns, essentially. So they're telling Republicans not to vote for them. This is again, all goes back to the election was rigged.
Right.
There's a lot of confusion. So I think maybe that actually does help the case of Democrats in Georgia. And one final point, though. Coalitions are important. What we see happening in Cobb County really is the coalition that's built by the NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund,
right.
All Voting is Local, Georgia Southern Poverty Law Center Action Fund. These groups are pivotal. So it's important for these groups to come together to fight voter suppression because it shows the unified coalition. And that's honestly the first most important step.
Let's go to Terrence Clark. He's a spokesman for the Warnock for Georgia campaign. Terrence, welcome to Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Hey, how y'all doing today?
Doing great. This is a Washington Post story here. Janine Eveler, who is the Cobb County Elections Director, she says she simply doesn't have enough trained staff in order to handle these number of polling locations. Quote, we lost several of our advanced voting managers and assistant managers due to the holidays, the workload, and the pandemic. She said the remaining team members who agreed to work would do so only if the hours were less onerous. We are at the end of the election cycle, and many are tired or just unwilling to work so hard, especially during this time of year. Then she says that the workers are, now this was interesting here. She said that the workers are seasonal employees hired and trained for statewide elections. Many of them were not willing to work 14-hour days for 6 days a week for 3 weeks. Now, here's what I just sort of interesting about this, Terrence. My parents are 73 years old. They work the polls. These are paid jobs. Right. So these are not non-paid jobs. These are actually paid jobs. My experience with people who work elections is that they are seasonal, and so they work those jobs. Are y'all buying this?
Thank you for having me on here again, Roland. I definitely appreciate it. And I can't speak to what the county official was talking about, but I know that with the interest that's in this race, there's so many people out here ready and willing to help work and secure our elections. You have folks like Fair Fight, ACLU, NAACP, the party, doing all types of amazing work. You can find some people to work these polls. And Reverend Warnock and John Ossoff not only put out a statement yesterday highlighting, why we need to expand access to the ballot, how important this election is, and how we quite frankly just believe in our heart that there are enough people out there willing and ready to do the work. And we'll continue raising that flag. I think that, they need the help. There's a number of people out there willing to do it. And we've been fighting for voting rights. Reverend Warnock has been fighting for voting rights for years. And I think that a number of people are a little bit suspicious about the intentions behind it. So we're going to continue trying to encourage people to go out there, early vote, absentee ballot vote, do what you can, because we see that there are clearly intentions by people on the other side potentially to limit who has access and where they can vote.
537,000 people voted early for the November 3rd race there in Cobb County. What's interesting is that Cobb County experienced, some people had wait times of 5 to 10 hours. So now, by shrinking in half, you are about to exacerbate those wait times.
Right. And I mean, I'll tell you from my own personal experience. So I live on the south side. I'm in a place called Henry County. Another suburban areas that's gone from Republican to Democrat, because you have precisely candidates like Reverend Warnock, John Ossoff, Stacey Abrams, who are clearly appealing to a growing electorate. It took me 5.5 hours to vote, and they had all types of machines in that place. So I think that, again, we are trying to expand access wherever we can. That's why we're encouraging people to let them know that it is safe to get your absentee ballot, drop it in the drop box. If you don't want to have to wait in those long wait times, if you don't want to have to be in those lines, potentially risking your safety, during COVID, it makes no sense to limit access in the middle of a pandemic, right? And so you have to ask yourself, what is the intention behind it? And I think we'll continue to do what we can, like I said, to make sure people recognize that early vote starts on the 14th. Try to get your vote out there. We have so much on the ballot right now, from expanding healthcare to climate change to voting rights in and of themselves. It just seems illogical. You wouldn't do this in a regular year, but we want to do it in the middle of a pandemic. It's a lot of questions, I think, left to be answered there.
And again, so we'll certainly see that if folks are sort of waiting on that. Terrence Clark, we certainly appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Appreciate you.
For the really thing, in a moment, we're going to talk with Cliff Albright. He is the co-founder of Black Voters Matter. I'm going to go back to my panel here. And Candace, again, I'm always talking about on this show how you have to connect the dots, how you have to understand that decision by the Supreme Court opened the door for massive voter suppression. Thousands of polling locations in the South have closed since the Shelby v. Holder decision. Most of your voter ID laws put in place after the Shelby v. Holder decision. All of these voter suppression tactics all came after the Shelby v. Holder decision. By also connecting the dots, of course, massive turnout for Obama in 2008. Then folks don't come back. Listen to me clearly, people who are listening. People don't come back and vote in the 2010 midterms. Republicans flip 16 state legislatures. That's why today they control 30 or more, I think it's 31, governor's mansions and legislatures in the United States. And so they then were able to put these laws into place and that's how political gerrymandering, because the gerrymandering came in after the 2010 election, because that was tied to the census. And so all these things are combined. And so the reason why this race and why Republicans, they get it in Cobb County is so important, because they know that if John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock, Candace, if they beat Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue, Democrats will have a 50-50 tie. Kamala Harris can break the tie, and they can actually pass a bill to restore what was denied in that Shelby v. Holder decision. That's why so much is on the line here if Ossoff and Warnock are able to win.
Absolutely. And you've connected the dots so well. And I think that one important thing that really kind of was the tipping point was what happened with Stacey Abrams. This really woke people up. And that's a big dot in the whole trajectory that you're talking about. People really had their eyes open. And then she put work in, got 1 million people registered, right? We had a lot of people that were surrounded, that got around and made that happen. Also connecting the dots, we have to look at what could potentially happen in the future in terms of what the Supreme Court looks like now, because we know that it's not going to happen there. So we definitely need to look at Congress. As you said, if it's a 50-50 tie, then we've got Kamala Harris to break that tie. So there is a little bit of hope there, but people have become more awakened. We were asleep. A lot of folks were asleep over the years. As you said, these midterm elections, people generally don't think about them. Now, 7 o'clock on CNN, we're sitting at home on a Sunday night watching people down in Georgia because it's just that important and all eyes are on Georgia. I think that people have gotten the message, not only for this election, but for more midterm elections to come and in the future. I think people have finally become awakened.
The reason I keep using that phrase, Michael, connecting the dots, is because our people need to understand. Look at what happened in North Carolina when Democrats were able to gain control of the North Carolina Supreme Court. That's why voting also matters, because guess what? You've got the sister there, Sherry Beasley, who is down 400 votes from being the Chief Justice, which means that Democrats could have had a much larger lead. Now that's going to shrink. That is important because she then determines what is called up. That matters also because, again, for the folks, when they say if voting doesn't matter, if 500 more people voted in North Carolina, she is Chief Justice. That's how they were able to strike down a voter ID there in North Carolina. That's how they were to strike down racial gerrymandering. And so we have to understand all of these things are interlocking, and how not voting can determine who does win. And then who wins then determines who controls the legislature. Who controls the legislature then determines what laws are passed. And then who wins on the county level determines who controls the elections board, which then controls polling sites. All of these things go together.
Absolutely, Roland. Not only does it all go together, but my degree is in business administration. So when we talk about economic empowerment and building black businesses, in 2016, you had, people saying we don't need to vote. We just need to do economic empowerment and, build businesses, things like that. And I said, that's good. I'm all for that. I've done that. But you also need to elect a president whose economic policies are going to protect the economy that your black-owned business depends upon to survive. You also need to elect a House of Representatives and a U.S. Senate that are going to pass laws that protect the economy and are beneficial to your black-owned business, to your family, to your communities, et cetera. So this is all connected. Everything from criminal justice reform to relieving student loan debt to the Education Department, Environmental Protection Agency. So this is all connected. Then when we look at federal judges, because see, in 2016, one of the ways that the Republicans were able to get people to come out and vote against their own interests and vote for Trump was they said this is about the courts, the federal court and the Supreme Court. So Trump has gotten, I think it's 225 federal judges now confirmed. Okay, and it pushed through the Senate, and a lot of these nominations are coming from the Federalist Society and the Heritage Foundation, the Federalist Society and the Heritage Foundation. The year 2043 is what has a lot of these white people scared. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And they know that by 2043, they will no longer be the majority population in this country. So they want to control the federal courts for the next 25, 50, 35, 40 years. Okay, so this is why even after they didn't pass a coronavirus bill in the Senate, they're still ramming through these unqualified federal judges. This is one of the biggest white affirmative action programs I've ever seen. Go ahead, brother. These are unqualified people. Go ahead.
And Rena, I'm going to bring in Cliff Albright just 1 second here. But again, when we talk about how it's all interrelated, this is why we often on this show constantly say you cannot ignore city elections, school board elections, county elections, state elections, federal elections, because what happens in this state election could impact what happens in this county election. What happens in this county election now impacts early voting locations. And so everything is not about the president or U.S. Senate or congressional races.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Roland, I think back to what's interrelated when you mention that word. By and large, we are a nation made up largely of people that do not want to be inconvenienced. And by virtue of being people who do not want to be inconvenienced, we have fractured ourselves as a society. And that has led to us caring less and less about what happens to our neighbors. So the neighbors that don't look like us, don't think like us, ideologically, ethnically, racially, we are so divided because we have figured out that to be less inconvenienced, we can just shut off caring. We don't have to show up to certain things. We don't have to care about certain things. So our value system is where all this really comes down to. What is in our value system? I think about myself, for example, often when I compare myself to, say, cousins of Indian ancestry and who are the daughter or sons of immigrants like my parents. And so I think about that, and I think that it actually started at home for me. My dad got me really civically involved, got me caring about what happened in our government, not just because of my family's origin story, but literally because it was something that he weaved into our nightly dinner conversations. And he made time on the weekends to take me to an NPR event, for example. I learned what National Public Radio was at a very young age. And so it became ingrained in my family's value system. And therefore, it became something that was just natural to me when I was 18. Now, registering as a Republican was not something I don't think my father was very proud of, but he was glad that I cared so much. And I think that is the thing we do and we have to talk about as a nation moving forward, particularly this next year after this new administration comes into power. We really have got to figure out, how do we get people to care? How do we get people to show up? And how do we make it a part of our family value system that voting, civic engagement, these things are paramount to having the society, however you see it, having the American society that we all want, that we all can thrive in. Until then, it's just going to be an every 4 years game. One thing, though, I want to share with our audience a stat that actually did help me feel more encouraged about the situation in Georgia, for example. This one stat really stuck out to me, and it was the number of eligible but unregistered Georgians. In 2016, it was 22%. Guess what? It fell. And in 2020, it was 2%. That's encouraging. That number is encouraging. That tells you people are showing up. They're figuring out something matters. I should show up. I should care. I should be a part of a change because this is something that has had to take a multi-pronged effort from outside forces, but we can do it right by making it right in our families first.
Cliff Albright is the co-founder of Black Voters Matter. Cliff joins us right now. Cliff, look, elections are not federal elections. They are actually state elections. And they're not really state elections. They're also local elections. And so the reason I'm constantly walking through this process is for people to understand that, yes, you have the Secretary of State, yes, you have the governor, but the decisions to exactly what early voting locations, those are county decisions. And so counties make those choices. That's also based upon budgeting. And so we have to understand that. And so and we're seeing this now, again, what Cobb County is doing. And look, it is fundamentally the Republican Party strategy to lead voter suppression, pure and simple. That is their strategy.
Yeah, definitely. And for all the reasons that we've already talked about on this show, they recognize that their numbers are decreasing. They're recognizing that the demographics are on our side. They're recognizing that we're increasing turnout, that we're increasing registrations, right? And so it's at the local level. You've made the point very well about connecting the dots. The reality is, we talk about Trump, right? And what this Trump era has meant. Trump didn't just happen overnight, and Republicans didn't get control of stuff overnight. You talked about, 2010. Even before 2010, they had a strategy which targeted the local level. As you said, county commissions, election boards, state legislatures. That's how they got to the situation where they were then able to gerrymander. After gerrymandering, they were then able to deepen their positions in Congress, et cetera, et cetera. If we're going to undo this, we've got to do it using the reverse strategy. We've got to do on the same strategy, but to our favor. We've got to take over the same things: county level, local level, DAs, sheriff, school board, board of elections, all of that, in order to reverse this tide that we face. And we're doing it. And that's what's taking place in Georgia. That's part of the reason that we've had the success. And that's what has them on the run. You don't cheat when you feel like you're winning, right? You cheat when you know that you're behind and that you're losing and you're scared and you're desperate.
You have the folks there in Cobb County saying, "Hey, sorry, we simply just don't have the people." Again, are you buying that? Are you buying that answer? Because again, these are paid positions. People are like, oh no, they're just so tired. Again, as somebody whose parents work the polls, they ain't got no problem making more money.
No. I mean, and if you look at those reasons that were in that letter, it makes absolutely no sense from a couple of different perspectives, right? They talk about, it's the pandemic. It's, it's in the middle of the holiday season, right? It's a runoff election. Guess what? None of that was surprising. We've been in a pandemic now for 9 months, right? We knew that there was going to be a runoff. Even if you didn't know that there were going to be 2 runoffs, you knew that the other race, that the Warnock race was going to go into a runoff because it was a jungle primary, right? So we knew all these things were going to be the situation. So to use that as an excuse, as like these are things that just came out of the sky, makes absolutely no sense. And nor does it make sense, as you pointed out, that you can't find workers, right? Because again, 1, you knew that you were going to be in this situation, but 2, it's the holiday season. Like, you mean to tell me that you can't find some folks? And the truth is, you don't even have to have the poll workers that are just from that county. They could actually be from outside the county. You trying to tell me that you can't find 30, 40 workers to cover these 6, 5, whatever polling places?
Wait a minute, hold on 1 second. Hold on 1 second. You're saying that to work the polls there in Cobb County, you don't have to live in that county? They could actually, if there are workers who are in DeKalb or if there are workers who are in Fulton County, they can actually hire them?
That's my understanding. We can double check that. Certainly someone on your team could double check that and we can get back to you. But that is my understanding from what I read earlier today. But even if it just has to be somebody in Cobb County, you can't tell me. I know Cobb County. There are communities all over Cobb County where you can find folks that are looking for holiday money, who have skills or who can be trained, right? Which is part of the issues that we've been raising all year long in terms of the training for these situations. So you can't tell me that they couldn't, knowing that we're in this situation, knowing that we're in a pandemic, knowing that there are some older voters that maybe would normally volunteer, or not volunteer, but would normally work the polls that weren't available. There is no way you can convince me that they didn't know that they would be in this situation. At the end of the day, this is not a situation that they were trying to fix. They know what the turnout looked like, not just in the metro counties, but all over the state in Black and brown communities. And they don't want to see that kind of turnout repeat itself in this runoff election.
All right, then. Cliff Albright, of course, co-founder of Black Voters Matter. Cliff, what are your upcoming events there in Georgia our folks need to be aware of?
The main thing is, it's this ongoing voter suppression, right? It's and not even at just the county level. The Secretary of State continues to launch investigations that are targeting voter registration organizations like the New Georgia Project. It's really ironic when you talk about the hate and the threats that this Secretary of State and even the government to a certain extent. It's literally like in '63, Malcolm talked about the chickens coming home to roost. That's literally what this is. They have created an environment of hate, an environment of false narratives around voter fraud, right? An environment that has attacked voting rights organizations, and now it's backfiring on them. And the suppression is backfiring on them, because the truth is, the more they do these suppression tactics, they're actually helping our cause, because people who may not have even been fully aware of the runoff race, right, who may have maybe got a little disengaged, the more we hear about these stories, whether it's Cobb County or whether it's Trump and all his fake litigation trying to steal the election, the more we hear about all this, the more that folks that otherwise may not have been engaged are actually starting to take notice. And so it makes our job actually a little bit easier, putting aside the suppression itself, but the narrative that it creates raises the awareness of folks that then lets us say, look, y'all, this is why we got to get out in these streets and we got to get to the polling place.
Cliff Albright, I surely appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
All right, folks, breaking news. Joe Biden has picked Congresswoman Marcia Fudge of Ohio to be Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. She is going to, of course, be leading that department. Now, this is quite interesting because Fudge really was going after the agricultural secretary job. She was pushed vigorously by Congressman Jim Clyburn, but Joe Biden has decided to name her as Secretary of HUD. And so that the Washington, the Politico, the Wall Street Journal, they are both reporting that that particular news as well. We certainly will wait for further announcement. This follows, of course, a decision by Joe Biden to pick retired four-star General Lloyd Austin to be his Secretary of Defense in the Pentagon. Speaking of that, today, a group of civil rights leaders met with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris to discuss his picks for his cabinet. In that particular meeting there, they talked about a variety of things. In fact, the Biden campaign released a readout of that meeting. I'm going to pull it up in a second. The NAACP, National Urban League, NAACP Legal Defense Fund, Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, National Coalition of Black Civic Participation, Melanie Campbell, they were all in that particular meeting. And the idea, again, was all about the issue of the various appointees. And so, again, this is the email here that I received from the Biden-Harris team. If we can go ahead and go to my iPad. The readout says, today the president-elect hosted a virtual meeting with civil rights leaders, joined by Vice President-elect Harris and Congressman Cedric Richmond. President-elect Biden thanked the leaders for meeting with him for their support and counsel over the years and expressed the desire that this was the first of an ongoing relationship with this administration. They discussed their joint priorities, including advancing racial equity across the board, enforcing civil rights, and assembling a diverse White House and cabinet that represents America. They expressed the need to make sure the public knows the historic nature of many of the president-elect's diverse nominees and the need to galvanize the community around making sure that the Senate confirms them. The president-elect was joined by Melanie Campbell, President and CEO, National Coalition on Black Civic Participation and convener, Black Women's Roundtable, Kristen Clark, President Executive Director for the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, Sherlyn Ifill, President and Director Counsel, NAACP Legal Defense Fund, Vanita Gupta, President and CEO, the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, Derek Johnson, President and CEO of the NAACP, Mark Morial, CEO of the National Urban League, and Reverend Al Sharpton, President and founder of the National Action Network. That was that particular meeting. Now, earlier in the day, Joe Biden also unveiled his health team. And one of the folks who he named to the health team there, of course, he picked, you see Dr. Vivek Murthy, who is returning as a Surgeon General. You also have of course, one of the leaders in California is going to become Secretary of HHS. And so that's the team right there. But you see his COVID task force chair, Dr. Marcella Nunez-Smith, who was picked. This is what she had to say today.
Mr. President-elect, Madam Vice President-elect, thank you so much for this opportunity to serve the American people. I'm proud to go to work with leaders who are deeply committed to science and to centering equity in our response to this pandemic, and not as a secondary concern, not as a box to check, but as a shared value, woven into all of the work that we do and prioritized by every member of the Biden-Harris team. I'm enormously thankful to my research team and to my colleagues, to President Salovey and the other leadership here at Yale for supporting me in this work. And I'm grateful to all of the researchers and advocates who've blazed the trail, whose work on health equity and racial justice too often went unbelieved or overlooked across the generations. Most of all, I'm thankful to my family, to Jesse and our 3 children for their unwavering support and humor, and to my mother and her mother for modeling kindness, generosity, and courageous leadership through service. I have wanted to be a doctor since I was 6 years old, and I'm a proud general internal medicine physician today. But as I grew up, I came to understand that there were deeper dimensions to health beyond what I saw in the human biology textbooks that I borrowed from my mother's bookshelf. I grew up on St. Thomas in the US Virgin Islands, a place where people too often died too young from preventable conditions. My own father had his first stroke in his 40s and was left paralyzed. I learned there was a term for what we were, an underserved community, marginalized by place, and by race. In my medical training, I saw countless patients whose conditions were shaped by factors having nothing to do with science and everything to do with broader social inequity. And now the COVID-19 crisis has laid those inequities bare. It is not a coincidence, and it is not a matter of genetics, that more than 70% of African Americans and more than 60% of Latinx Americans personally know someone who has been hospitalized or died from COVID-19. The same disparities ingrained in our economy, our housing system, our food system, our justice system, and so many other areas of our society have conspired in this moment to create a grief gap that we cannot ignore. It is our societal obligation to ensure equitable access to testing, treatments, and vaccines, equitable support for those who are hurting, and equitable pathways to opportunity as we emerge from this crisis and rebuild, including for those most marginalized communities, the undocumented, the incarcerated, the homeless. I'm grateful for this chance to continue this work, to earn trust and to find success through genuine partnerships with the people and communities who've been hit the hardest during and before the crisis. On this team, you will be heard, you will be counted, and you will be valued. Thank you.
Smith is a professor at the Yale School of Medicine and the founding director of Yale's Equity Research and Innovation Center, and she will serve as the COVID-19 Equity Task Force chair. I want to go back to my panel. I want to talk about these various appointments and also the meeting with civil rights leaders there. One of the things, Candace, that if you look at the group there, I mean, those are the traditional civil rights groups. I have made the point that we should there should be more groups there as well. I think there should be an additional meeting, a meeting with Black Voters Matter, with Until Freedom, with other upstart organizations, not just the traditional civil rights organizations, to present a much broader Black agenda. Your thoughts?
Absolutely. First of all, I want to say that I just loved everything that Marcella said. And I think that that opens some doors for people to really understand and see Black women in a new light, because many times they're just underexposed. But certainly we need more meetings so that people can understand what we are talking about, what is important in the Black community. One way that you find that out is you bring them to the table. And you don't bring them to the table just once for some type of a media event. You make them part of things that are going on. They have to be integral so that as things change, as things grow, as subjects come about, there can be people there who can guide them on what's really going on at the bottom, and what they need to know. They certainly know what people are thinking about at the top, but it's the people at the bottom and the middle before you get to the top that really want their voices to be heard. So it's not just enough to stop at this one meeting or to have 2 or 3 meetings. And as we know, Biden, when he made his acceptance speech, or when he declared and said, okay, yes, when it became about that he was declared president, he said, hey, African Americans have always shown up. And that is the truth. And now he has to show up, make some types of rules and make some type of agenda to make sure that we're at the table, because we showed up for him and now people are waiting for him to show up for us.
Also, just before we continue the conversation, a bit of breaking news is here. The U.S. House just passed the Defense Authorization Bill. Donald Trump has threatened to veto that particular bill because it renames Confederate bases, as well as he wants to go after tech companies. It passed with a wide margin, meaning that if he does indeed veto it, they could actually override his vote. We'll see what happens with the Senate, and then if he does indeed go through with this threat to veto that bill. So just letting you know that. Michael, I'll go to you again. Look, I get the civil rights groups wanting to meet with him about appointments. That is critical. There are other positions, You know, there are other positions
Attorney General.
that come up that as he begins to feel it out. I've seen that the two people leading contenders for Attorney General are federal judge Merrick Garland and then former Alabama Senator Doug Jones.
Doug Jones.
I argue, frankly, that if it's down to Merrick Garland and Doug Jones, he should pick Doug Jones. Why? Don't take Merrick Garland off the federal bench, the D.C. Circuit, knowing full well when you don't know if you're going to have a 50-50 tie in the United States Senate. Don't let Mitch McConnell control the process as to who actually gets picked to fill that particular seat. That's just my view there. Your thought? Go ahead.
Well, no, I agree with that. And when I heard Doug Jones was in the running, I remembered when you had him on the show a few weeks ago, and we talked to him, and it was right before the election, and he ended up losing the election, but he could end up becoming Attorney General. So the meeting that the civil rights leaders had today, I think, was crucial, and I think some of our people don't understand the long game that they're playing. What they're saying is we're not going to wait until all the decisions have been made and then complain about the decisions. We're going to use the leverage we have now while they're while the planning process is taking place to push our agenda. Okay, which is absolutely correct. The other thing is, I think it would be good also for the newer organizations and things like that to have a meeting also. So I think the way that people are approaching this and the way a lot of the civil rights organizations are approaching this, I think is different. And you may correct me if I'm wrong on this, Roland. I think is different than how they did with President Obama, but I think they learned a lot from President Obama, because I remember you and I talked about this before. It wasn't until August 2013 that they presented President Obama with an agenda, a black agenda, quote unquote black agenda. It's about a 33-page black agenda. I have a copy of it. Okay, that was in the second term. Okay, but you talk about how the LGBT community presented him with about a 54-page agenda within the first 60 days of his first term.
Yep.
So I think many of us are learning from past mistakes and things like that, whether it's intentional or just something new. He was the first black president, but he was the 44th president in general. So I think this is good so far, but I think it's important to keep pushing. I want to see who's going to end up Attorney General, but also who's going to end up as Secretary of Agriculture. Secretary of Agriculture is extremely important.
The second largest budget in the federal government. Again, always follow the money. That's what you always have to do there. One of the things that I hope after he makes his DOJ pick, I really hope, Rena, that when it comes to running the Civil Rights Division, that Kristen Clark, someone like her, the Lawyers Committee has chosen to run that. No woman has ever been confirmed for the position. Vanita Gupta was the acting leader of that division, but was never confirmed. That's a confirmed position. So no woman in history has ever been confirmed by the Senate to lead the Civil Rights Division. To me, that would be a great pick to have someone like Kristen Clark restoring the integrity of that division, which has been completely decimated under Donald Trump.
Yes, it has. And I think that is the hardest part to have watched, to see Vanita Gupta do such an outstanding job there. I think people across the political spectrum could agree. We need to be having these conversations about what civil rights is in the year 2020, 2021. I mean, with the Kamala Harris coming in to the VP position, this presents a really robust opportunity for the administration to not just say, hey, we're going to do things differently than the previous administration. These are the wrongs we're going to fix. This presents an opportunity to bring so many new people, so many new groups to the table. And that was to your point earlier, Roland. It has to be done. That is the way I think this administration can win a lot of truly folks that feel confused right now about what's going on in the country. The fact that the phrase "the election was rigged" is still a phrase that still is out there every day in mainstream media. Now, obviously, it is one that's propped up by some far-right voices. But I think the unification that the Biden-Harris campaign talked about can really happen in the place of truly criminal justice as well. And Kristen, having been on the show numerous times, talking about a variety of issues in which she and her colleagues have done the work to stand up for Black communities that have truly borne the brunt of our federal government's inadequacy, its incompetence in creating a judiciary that serves all Americans. It's much like medicine. And on this show, I've talked about often how I'm married to a physician, I'm the daughter of a physician, I'm the sister of a physician. So I've learned certain things. And one thing that stuck out to me at a very young age as a brown girl growing up in Appalachia is when my mother, a lawyer, who actually explained to me why I was taking a different dose of Tylenol, because my body metabolizes it differently than a white person's body. When you look at clinical trials, who are largely the participants? Who are these drugs usually formulated for? White people. So communities of color, we've been left out for a long time, whether you look at healthcare or legal. A number of sectors are going to be, I frankly feel, unified by this administration. They're going to address some of the systemic racism that is apparent and obvious in so much of American life. So I'm definitely encouraged. I'm hopeful. That's my tone all the time these days, because we have a President-elect Biden. We have a VP-elect Kamala Harris that have their transition team boasts a largely female staff, and 40% of people of color on this transition team. That is really huge. We should feel good about it because, as you've always said, Roland, I really love this about you, because we need to continue to awaken our fellow Americans to the very facts. And the fact is, if we don't have more people of color in mid-level roles, in sort of senior roles, how do we ever get them to the top? There is no pipeline. So it's good to name people to the top. We need to do that, but we need to create the pipeline for people of color as well. And I think this administration is well suited to do so. They're already laying the foundation for such.
Folks, of course, other news. The Supreme Court weighs in on the campaign. We might as well play this. We only have 40 some odd days left to play this, so go right ahead. Trump has been constantly lying about the election. Did y'all hear the fool the other day in the Oval Office when he gave out another Presidential Medal of Freedom to a sports dude, where he says he won? Dude, no, you didn't. You lost. You lost. You lost. And he's lost so much in the courts, Candace. It's embarrassing. He was begging, oh my God, Supreme Court, please, intervene, please. It's got to be real painful when they issued a one-sentence rejection of the Pennsylvania lawsuit. Go to my iPad. The application for injunctive relief presented to Justice Alito and by him, referred to the court, is denied. That's it. It's one line. They have lost in state after state after state. It is embarrassing to watch these fools. And again, he's been begging. He's been calling Republican leaders in Pennsylvania, please, begging them to overturn the election. For somebody who talks about stealing the election, they literally are trying to steal it. They are begging people to overturn the will of the voter. You got this dumbass Ted Cruz who's saying that oh, no, I'll argue the case. I'll argue the case before the Supreme Court. See, the only way you kind of get to argue the case before the Supreme Court is if there's actually a case.
A case.
There is no case, and you know what? I just for the sake of it, just for the hell of it, myself, Candace. Let's just go ahead and just listen to the whining of the right. Just listen.
Now, with more surrounding the legal battle out of Pennsylvania, Senator Ted Cruz. Senator, let me applaud you because you have offered to step up. I have said from the beginning, if you're looking at the constitutionality of what the state legislature in Pennsylvania did, it directly contradicts the language in Pennsylvania state constitution. Now, that to me is a slam dunk case the Supreme Court should take. You're now willing to argue that, which, by the way, let the record note, you have won cases in the Supreme Court.
Well, that's right, Sean, and it's good to be with you this evening. You know, we're seeing across the country lawsuits that are challenging voter fraud, that are challenging irregularities in the election. And in Pennsylvania, this appeal to the Supreme Court raises very serious issues. It raises pure issues of law. And I believe the Supreme Court should choose to take the case. I think they should hear the appeal. And as you noted, the legal team reached out and asked if I would be willing to present the oral argument if the court took the case, and I told them I'd be happy to, because particularly at a time when this country is so divided.
Candace.
Yeah.
They got crushed.
They got crushed in one sentence. And when you look at all of the facts, what we're looking at basically is a frivolous lawsuit. I mean, if you're going to go to court, you have to have something that you are arguing with facts that make sense, that could be decided one way or the other. Here's the thing. The decision has already been made. When the Constitution says we the people, guess what? We the people. And we have voted, and we have already spoken. So we have about 250 lawsuits across the country, and they keep being defeated. None of them have won. He's trying to create this narrative because he just doesn't know what to do. Frankly, we know that he's probably very scared because once he is out of office, he's going to be facing more lawsuits of his own that do have standing and that are not frivolous. At the end of the day, he probably owes the court some money because he's wasting people's time. Supporting this type of evidence or non-evidence to go through the court system, and it doesn't make any sense. They're just frivolous. There's nothing behind it, nothing evidentiary to support.
I am loving the complete, just how the right is unhinged on this, Rena. I am, in fact, Lou Dobbs has completely escaped any reality.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, this is this fool last night, y'all, with Stephen Miller on his show. I just want to, you know what? I really should play the crazy ass white people stinger right here. I really should, because this, just, if y'all want to see Looney Tunes, watch this.
Americans do nothing, Stephen. Nothing.
It's an outrage.
Is wrong? Well, what's wrong with the Republican Party?
Where is the outrage?
It's really on the
tens of millions of ballots.
Where the hell are the Republicans?
No signature checks.
Where the hell are the Republicans?
You're right,
Where
Lou.
are they?
Tens of millions of ballots nationwide, no signature checks, no citizenship checks, no residency checks, no age checks, no criminal record checks, not even checking if you're alive or dead? Are we a third world country? Are we a banana republic? What does it come to? If you count only legal ballots from U.S. citizens,
let me tell you what
this president gets 4 more years.
Let me, and you know, from your lips to God's ears, the reality is that this president right now is fighting, and let's be straightforward about it. He's fighting all alone. And Ted Cruz has stepped up to say he'll argue before the Supreme Court. Why in God's green earth wouldn't the White House jump on it? Why shouldn't they accept that right now?
And I'll just say this one other thing, though. If 3 state legislatures I just outlined, one correction in Wisconsin.
No, Stephen, I won't let you say. I'm not going to let you do this. I'm not going to let you do that. I'm not going to let you do that. I ask a question. You and I, we're reasonably smart and decent fellows. Why don't you answer me? That's all I'm asking here, Stephen. Why don't you guys jump and salute Ted Cruz and say, yes, we want you on the team now? My God, this is not a time for internecine nonsense on the part of the Republican Party, which is watching its blood drain into the streets because they're gutless.
I just got to play one more, y'all. He literally, so Mark Elias is one of the attorneys who's been whooping their ass in court. I mean, first of all, numerous people have been kicking their asses in court, okay? Lawyers committed Pacific Rights under law, many others. Listen to Lou float this one, y'all. I just got to show y'all crazy. I just got to show y'all. Watch this.
Mark Elias, why don't you guys put together $500 million and go hire him and get him out of your way? Mark Elias. Why don't you guys put together?
Wait a minute. He literally said, why don't y'all go raise $500 million to go pay off Mark Elias to stop kicking your ass in court. That's basically what he said. He said, Mark Elias is whooping y'all ass, and I'm laughing because this is Mark Elias' Twitter feed. He's showing you all of the times. Go to my iPad. Look at this. He goes, victory, 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 victory. He's showing all of the. He goes, what was filed, and he goes, victory, victory, victory. Oops, another victory. And he's just going on. And this is what he tweeted to what he said. He said, I've decided to turn down the money and keep my soul, but find out what Lou Dobbs thinks is worth $500 million and sign up for my free email newsletter. Rita, go ahead.
Oh, man. I mean, I think that's a lesson in grade A classy trolling. I mean, Mark Elias really taught us how to do it right. This is man, Roland, how much time we got tonight? Because there's a lot to peel off here for someone like me who made her entire career on the right and now has to deal with seeing these same people be triggered, lose their darn minds about what's happening to their frivolous lawsuits. And Ted Cruz, for a minute, can we just back up and remember this is the guy who Trump insulted by saying something about his wife, not just
and his daddy.
And his dad. That's right.
And his dad. Calling his dad what? The guy who assassinated
who killed Lee Harvey Oswald.
This is a new territory. I want nothing to do with this. I don't align with the party in its current form. I did not sign up for any of this because, I mean, it is just obvious. If you listen to Miller for a second there, you hear him talking out of both sides of his mouth. He's talking about just a banana republic. Buddy, what's your guy been doing for 4.5 years now? He's been the one laying the groundwork for a banana republic in which he can come back again and again. So we get it. These Trump minions are they've lost their minds. They really have. They are unable to they're divorced from reality. They're unable to accept facts. And this is let me just shed some insight here to the audience. I mean, anybody with a brain can really see this for what this is. But I'd like to just put emphasis on the point that as somebody coming up in the Republican Party over these past 15 years in particular, what I saw was the Democrats are the devil narrative that really has won out now. This is what's happening here is that Republicans have such a problem with Democrats. They've painted Democrats out to be anti-American.
Got it.
That Democrats will kill your children. Democrats essentially are talking about depopulation stuff. I mean, this is the stuff that is winning with the base and making the party more and more right-wing loony.
Rena, hold tight 1 second. I got to bring in Melanie Campbell right now. She, of course, Black Women's Roundtable. She was one of the participants in that call today with Joe Biden, Kamala Harris. Melanie, how did that meeting go? And what came out of the meeting? We earlier read the readout from the White House.
Thank you, Roland. I apologize. I can't stay on as long.
It's all good. Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Okay?
Yeah, we got you. We got you. Go ahead.
Okay. Sorry, I'm having some audio technical things on my end. So.
We got you. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I thought it was very good. A very good meeting. It was close. Of course, President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Harris. And so I think one of the key things was that there was definitely a strong consistent commitment on dealing with issues of racial justice. When it comes to what I focused in on was the conversation around Black women, the role of Black women. Definitely thank them for selecting Harris and also Harris.
All right, having some issues with Melanie's Skype right there. Let's see if we can get Melanie back with that. So I know she has another interview to do. So let me know if we have Melanie back there. Real quick, Michael, I want to go to you. When you see these Republicans losing in the courts, but you also have the Republican Party, who's absolutely nuts, because today. A very basic function where Congress votes on a resolution telling American people they're planning for an inauguration. The Republicans wouldn't even vote for that.
Right.
So the message to Joe Biden should be, dude, stop saying they're going to work with you. Okay? Joe Biden had better understand something right now. They are not going to work with him. The Republican Party today, they are the party of Trump. Trump is going to announce on Inauguration Day that he's running in 2024. He wants to freeze everybody out. He is the only way you are going to get rid of Trump, you have to perform an exorcist in the Republican Party. And what he is doing, all these lawsuits and the money he is raising, he has these idiots like Sean Hannity, idiots like Lou Dobbs, idiots like Mark Levin, all of these idiots out here in conservative radio, on television, the idiots at OAN, the idiots over at Newsmax as well. These people, oh my God, it was all stolen, and they are so dumb. They've given this man $200 million to fight legal challenges. When you getting your ass whooped, when you're 1 for 51, you got to be stupid to keep giving somebody that money. But they're not going to work with Joe Biden. The fact that they are unwilling to say, Donald Trump, shut the hell up. Because here's why. Because what Trump is doing, those voters, they ain't voting Democrat ever. When they say this is Trump's base, no, it's the Republican Party's base. And that's what they're doing. The Republican Party of old ain't coming back. Rena ain't coming back.
No,
so bottom line is here. So matter of fact, y'all might want to stop calling yourselves Republicans because it ain't coming back. Michael, what they are showing, when you can't even vote on a simple resolution, that's all you need to know.
Well, these are a bunch of cowards. But see, on my show, Roland, I talk about how these Trump supporters who keep donating money to so they can file these frivolous lawsuits. These are people who have not realized that wrestling is not real. This is who they are appealing to. And when you look at wrestling, everybody's in on it except the audience. See, the announcers, the managers, the people in the ring, everybody knows it's fake except the audience. Now, one person who donated $2.5 million to these frivolous lawsuits has realized that wrestling is not real. His name is Frederick Eshelman. He donated $2.5, TheGuardian.com and Business Insider got an article on this. We talked about this on my show. Trump supporter who gave $2.5 million to fight election fraud wants money back. He's suing them to get his money back because he realized wrestling is not real. So they have to keep going with the bit. They got to keep going with the bid line. That's what Stephen Miller was doing. He knows it's time to call the Jim James, Paul and Tyrone Moving Company. He knows he got to leave January 20th, 2021, but he has to go with the bid. So personally, I got no sympathy for them. They're suppressing their own votes in Georgia. They can't figure out whether they're going to turn out or not turn out or whatever. They can't figure out which line Republican to listen to. So personally, this is the chickens coming home to roost. Okay, what we got to focus on January 5th, 2021, we got to focus on voting for Raphael Warnock and Ossoff. So that Democrats, and I'm neither Democrat nor Republican, but I sure as hell ain't stupid. I see whose policies are most beneficial for us and who's blocking those. So Democrats control the Senate, and we can push these bills through and push these Republicans out. I need everybody who is watching right now, all of you who are watching on YouTube and Facebook and Periscope, I need you to understand what we are about to go through. I have been warning you about this. 2009, I said, we're living in the age of white minority resistance. Right. With the election of Obama. The election of Obama led to the election of Trump. White minority resistance. It is happening. Y'all, these people are unhinged. These are the same people who surrounded the home of the Secretary of State of Michigan the other day, saying the election was stolen, and they were armed. Understand what is going on here, and Donald Trump is going to continue to whip these people up and whip them up and whip them up. And unless a Republican with guts stand up and says, stop it,
enough like Senator Pat Toomey, who said what you're saying about Pennsylvania is a lie. They're now attacking Brian Kemp.
Mm-hmm.
Trump called Brian. Trump. They're now calling. So Kayleigh McEnany was just. Oh my God, Brian Kemp. He's awful. He's just y'all. They are completely. I'm just telling you right now. Just be prepared. I need to bring in Melanie Campbell back. I think we got her signal straight, and so we got Melanie back. Melanie, I was talking about just how unhinged these Republicans are, and they're going to continue to be that way. Again, just give us the readout real quick of the meeting with Biden-Harris.
And I'm not sure where it cut off, but the key was that we talked about really being committed to dealing with the issues of racial injustice in this country, things like voting rights and the like. But I also focused in on Black women being on the statutory positions on the cabinet. He also said in that conversation that he was definitely looking to have at least a couple of Black women. I think since even while we were on the call with them, I think Marcia Fudge came out that she would be HUD secretary. It didn't come out in him saying that.
Yeah, it's been announced, yes.
But it came out on the media. But listing that we expect as for Black women who gave 90% of our vote to see ourselves represented. Many of my other colleagues also talked about other African Americans, but men as well, and the need for to make sure that whoever is selected for Attorney General, how critical that position needs to be. That would have the kinds of experience to be able to address some of these critical concerns in our community. Folks mentioned folks like, a couple folks did mention folks like Tony West and Deval Patrick, for example, would be some of the folks that would be definitely excellent for those positions. We talked about. You
mean for attorney? You mean for Attorney General, Tony West or Deval Patrick?
Yeah, Attorney General. Sorry.
Right, because what I've been hearing is that Doug Jones and Merrick Garland are at the top of that list.
I did not know that specifically, but what we talked about was the need for African Americans, and that we expect from African Americans to be represented well in those statutory cabinet positions. That was our focus.
All right, then. Well, we certainly appreciate it, Melanie, for giving us that update, and then we'll see what happens.
Thank you.
All right, okay, thanks so much. I appreciate it. Folks, I wanted to talk about this here. This is something that is crazy. And so to understand how evil and despicable these people are, 40-year-old Brandon Bernard, he is slated to become the 9th person executed since the Trump administration recommended capital punishment in July. Last week, a federal judge denied Bernard's lawyers' motion to stay the execution, despite the fact that several of the original jurors who initially sentenced Bernard to death row now oppose his forthcoming execution. He was just 18 years old in 1999 when he was arrested for his involvement in the slaying of a couple in Central Texas. The incident began as a foiled carjacking, but ended with the husband and wife being shot in the head. Bernard was an accomplice in the act and allegedly believed the couple was already dead when he was then told by the gunman to set the car on fire. The case has received widespread attention with the clemency petition that has reached Donald Trump. Now, Bernard is currently scheduled to be put to death by lethal injection in the U.S. Penitentiary in Terre Haute, Indiana, on Thursday. Now, here's what's interesting. This actually marked the 13th execution. I'm sorry, y'all, not 9th, the 13th execution since July. There was a 17-year hiatus when it came to the death penalty on the federal level. But this is a line, Rena, out of this AP story. It says this will cement Trump's legacy as the most prolific execution president in over 130 years. He'll leave office having executed about a quarter of all federal death row prisoners, despite waning support for capital punishment among both Democrats and Republicans. Rena, what's crazy here is, what are you in a rush for? They are literally rushing to put 5 people to death between now and Inauguration Day.
Mm-hmm. It's a sick move. You know, it's one that I think really solidifies in the minds of a lot of us who are not mental health professionals or anything. But this president is a sociopath. He is sick in the head. And this really, I think, counts to him as doing something. So he can say he did something. I want to tell the audience I've been affiliated loosely and a supporter of conservatives concerned about the death penalty for a number of years now. I think that the Republican Party, what I've seen as I've made my career in it, has railed against abortion, anti-abortion. Everything is about, life, life, life. Well, if you care about life so much, what's with executions? What's with playing God, essentially? And so I really believe that we've learned a lot about the death penalty in the last 40 years in particular. And for 3 decades, what we've seen is our elected officials tinkering with the death penalty in an effort to essentially make it more accurate and effective. But the system continues to fail. And that's the problem I have with the death penalty. A number of Republicans in Congress do not have this issue. Like I said, again, these are the same people that speak at the March for Life rally every year. So if you're a conservative out there listening, I mean, this is a great group. Go check it out. Conservatives concerned about the death penalty. Here in Virginia, I'm a supporter of and affiliated with the Virginians against the death penalty. There's a lot we can do to talk about this. I mean, Trump is, there's a number of words we could use. I mean, he's talked about bringing back the firing squad, poison. I don't think that's going to happen. But the pace at which they want to kill people, federal government to kill people, that should disturb every American. And about Brendan's case, wow, rife with inaccuracies. And I think what we know now, what courts use now, the forensic work that's been done by professionals to modernize that science, that did not benefit him back then.
Well, it's just evil. It's just evil. And in fact, Candace, I want to read this here. Go back to my iPad, please. This is from the Associated Press story. Not since the waning days of Grover Cleveland's presidency in the late 1800s has the U.S. government executed federal inmates during a presidential transition. Cleveland was also the last presidency during which the number of civilians executed federally was in the double digits in a year, with 14 executed in 1896. But I want you to look at this chart here. It says death penalty in the United States, and it goes back to when the death penalty was restored, Candace. You see there, the orange represents the states. The blue represents the federal government. There was an execution there in 2001. There was an execution in 2003, and then I believe that was that McVeigh? I can't remember when he got executed. But look all those years of the states, and all of a sudden this huge block right there in 2020. That is Donald Trump. He wants, as a part of his legacy, to be he killed more people than anybody else. He wants that as his legacy.
He does. And we can also blame Attorney General Bill Barr, because he supported this and said that, yes, this can happen. It can happen quickly. There's a show that I watch called Botched. It's about plastic surgery, but it could be about the criminal justice system, because there's so many botchings as a part of this case. I mean, there were parts of this case on appeal where there was not even an opening statement that the attorney gave. And then, as we've talked about before, we had some junk forensics, junk science here. You had poor counsel. You also have someone who wasn't given the benefit of the doubt that their age actually played a part in this. This is a guy who just turned 18 at the time. I think he's 40 years old now. Everybody, think about your 18-year-old self. This is why we have age limits. Let's say you have to be 35 to be president of the United States. This is why we don't have juveniles that will suffer and go through the death penalty process. This is someone who just turned 18. There are so many studies that have showed how the development of an 18-year-old male's brain kind of happens, and it doesn't happen as quickly as it does for somebody else, obviously, who might be older or a different sex. So this case has just been botched from the beginning, let alone the fact that you have former jurors who have spoken out and said, my goodness, I am so glad that these days have come where I can finally speak and say my truth, that I don't believe that this man should have been put on death row. I think that one thing that is working in his favor, and we're talking about the clock ticking, and the clock ticking mean that when President-elect Joe Biden comes into office, he doesn't believe in the death penalty, so there might be some time that could be bought. On his side, though, if he gets the celebrities, if he gets people working for him on the ground. I mean, listen, look at Kim Kardashian. Whether you like her or not, she was in the president's office and she did get somebody pardoned. And she has spoken out about this case, too. So there is some groundswell of events that is going on right now. And it will be very interesting to see what happens in this case. But meanwhile, here's Donald Trump saying it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Basically, just kill them all, because that's going to be a feather in my cap.
Yep, absolutely. Folks, got to go to a break. We come back. We'll talk about Amazon removing a racist doll from their listing. It's kind of basic, really. It's kind of basic. Also, Chef Huda joins us for our Black Business segment, talking about her new spice line. All right, y'all, more on Roland Martin Unfiltered after this break.
This generation, which gets so much inspiration from entertainment. You know, this generation is influenced. I mean, every generation has their influence. But I would argue, by and large, when you talk about Harry Belafonte, or you talk about, you know, how it was, you know, in the 60s, 70s, and even 80s, there was, you know, you had the entertainers, you had the church, you had the activists. In our day and time, you know, the church is somewhat losing its influence. Entertainment influence is growing. The activists are losing their influence. So where do most, you know, this younger generation go? They go to entertainment. You know, and so the influencers in entertainment can actually move the needle. And when you see people become active, I love how this younger group of people are saying, wait a minute, we don't like what just happened with Kavanaugh. We're going to do something about it. We don't like the fact that there's no gun control. We're going to do something about it. And I do think that as tragic as these events are, they are becoming more galvanizing to get this younger group of voters, which is so influential, to get out and do what we know they can do, which is to help move the needle in a massive way.
Neighbor as yourself. It's a value we all try to live by, but in Washington, it's been forgotten. It's clear our politics are broken, overcome by a selfishness that rewards money and power, leaving far too many of us out of the conversation. I'm Raphael Warnock, and I see you. I see too many communities left behind, too many hardworking people ignored. I'm running for Senate to be your voice. That's why I approve this message.
We're at Mom's Kitchen in Preston, Georgia. It's a family business. I enjoy making people happy, giving them a good meal. But since COVID, we had to close our main dining room. We lost all of that business, and we used to do a lot of caterings. We can't do any of that anymore. David Perdue knew what was about to happen. He was getting classified briefings about the pandemic. But instead of him being concerned about us, he off selling stock. We had no idea we'd have to close our businesses off. We'd lose caterings, and so many people died. And then when we needed help the most, he fought against the stimulus checks and to cut unemployment insurance. Perdue needs to come out and Ossoff in. Early voting starts December 14th. You gotta make a plan to vote.
I'm John Ossoff, and I approve this message.
Who stood behind this pulpit was opposed by the powerful and wealthy. He was called a communist, that he hated the police and his movement would destroy America. They attacked his personal life and distorted his policies. Sound familiar? It should. The hateful voices of old Georgia are back. They attacked Reverend King. Now they're attacking Reverend Warnock. It's disgusting. It's wrong. But with Mitch McConnell and Kelly Loeffler, it's no surprise. The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Well, when you start thinking about the history in this country of voting rights, one of the things that people don't like to talk about was when you had Susan B. Anthony, who was battling Frederick Douglass. When you talk about the women's suffrage movement, there was some races in the women's suffrage movement. Yeah, that was real. And these races did not like the fact that black men got the right to vote through one of those Reconstruction amendments. I thought about that when I saw this story, where this was in Politico, and go to my iPad, please. Biden's Pentagon pick frustrates women who sought a different history maker. The story talks about all these women who felt that Michelle Flournoy should have been named as the Secretary of Defense. She served in a key role in the Pentagon under President Barack Obama. They keep saying this is the second time because they said she was passed over had Hillary won. Well, she wasn't passed over. Hillary Clinton didn't win. So she wasn't passed over. But the thing here is, and you got folks in here who are quoted as saying that, yeah, you know, look, we know General Lloyd Austin was picked, but. You know, and yes, he's the first African American as historic, but they really wanted a woman to be picked for this job. And so this is one of those things that, okay, fine, Michael, let's just break this thing down. If we want to talk about it. Politics are about the spoils go to those who win. 55% of white women voted for Donald Trump. 90+% of black women voted for Joe Biden. 80% of black men voted for Joe Biden. More black women and black men voted at a higher rate for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris than white people, than Latino people, than Asian American people in this country. Numbers don't lie. Right. So, you know, this whole deal of like, and so I just thought it was interesting reading this story. And the story says, but Florida backers, while stressing they have no personal beef with Austin, nonetheless said the former Undersecretary of Defense was the better choice, not merely because of her gender, but because she was the most qualified candidate. I mean, Lord Austin's a 4-star retired general. Granted, he has to get a waiver from the House. Yes. You got to get a waiver because, again, the Pentagon is supposed to be covered by civilian, and he has not been retired for 7 years, which is part of the law there. But, again, it's interesting, again, this dynamic. And the article, here's the other deal. The article says Biden's pick frustrates women. White women?
Yeah, which women are you referring to?
I'm just saying, white women? Because I go ahead.
Well, you know, so once again, when you deal with first of all, when you deal with the Democratic Party, you're dealing with a big tent, number one. But you're right. African Americans overwhelmingly supported Joe Biden. Lloyd Austin is more than qualified. Now that doesn't mean Flournoy is not qualified, but you have, I think, some how should we say, some white female grievance, I think also that you have in this as well. And you're right, it does remind you of Susan B. Anthony and Frederick Douglass, because the white suffragists, the white feminists who were fighting for the right to vote for women, they took offense to the fact that African-American men in 1870, because of the 15th Amendment, got the right to vote before they did. And they were saying, wait a second, these are former slaves. Many of them are former slaves. How did they get the right to vote before we do? Okay? And this caused some tension, because, you know, you're going to have some of them that were abolitionists. But they're like, hold on, wait a second. We want you to be free, but how you going to vote before we do? Okay, so yeah, this kind of reminds you of something like that also, you know, with this conflict here. But you know, hey, we'll see what happens.
Candace, again, when I see headlines like that, you know, women, I mean, my first instinct, did y'all ask any black women?
Right.
I think that you're right. Did you ask any black women? I think the answer is no, and that's how they came up with the headline. But it also reminds me of the fact that when we're in the workplace, and I mean black women and white women, we do understand the hierarchy of how it goes when it comes to moving up the job ladder and when it comes to getting what you want at work. It goes, and correct me if I'm wrong, and this is how I see it and the people in my circle see it, you've got white men, and then you've got black men, if they happen to be there. There might be the O and O, the one and only, but if they're there, they're going to get more respect. And then next, you have the white woman, and then you have the black woman. So I think that just is an example of what you're saying, in that there is a hierarchy, and white women are mad about it, and they're still mad about it. And we see this coming out in headlines like this. It makes sense. I see it in the workspace, and I think that this is what we're seeing.
Rena.
Well, that waiver you talked about, Roland, Matt has had to have that same waiver as well.
Right.
But I woke up this morning and I saw a tweet from Congresswoman Elisa Slotkin talking about being critical of the Trump of General Lloyd Austin, and I should read it. She said, "I have deep respect for General Lloyd Austin. We worked together when he commanded U.S. forces in Iraq, when he was vice chief of the Army, and when he was the CENTCOM commander. But choosing another recently retired general to serve in a role designed for a civilian just feels off." And my first instinct really was, is this what you're going to come with after everything we've been through as a country these past 4 years? Not just unconventional picks across the board. Well, Madison and McMaster certainly were the types of picks that Republicans, by and large, applauded for the Trump administration. But what I didn't love about the Congresswoman's tweet is that I just felt in my gut that would this tweet have come if it was anybody else? And we know that Jay Johnson has also been somebody who was sort of in contention as well. Michelle Flournoy, yes, she's beloved. But I think the Congresswoman, Elisa Slotkin's tweet indicated exactly what we know is at play here, is that if it's a Black person ahead of a white woman, what are we talking about here? It's a discomfort. And so I don't really have so much of a problem with General Austin. I mean, I don't know that much about his background, except for that what I have read of it and what I know of it. And the Congresswoman had a thread for anybody that's interested. She goes on and on about, his experience, but he hasn't been in private life long enough, and we really need a civilian over there. I just don't get it. Why are you picking these fights at this point in time? We are at a crossroads in the country. The current occupant of the Oval Office has not conceded. And look, he's not legally required to do so, but he continues to go out there and say that this election is rigged. I mean, our democracy is on the line more so than it has been in my lifetime ever before. So these are the battles they choose to pick. Shows us exactly what's going on inside their heads.
And again, look, I'm just saying, look, numbers don't lie. 55% of white women voted for Donald Trump. 5-5. An increase of 2% over 2016. Right. An increase of 2% in 2016. So, but part of my deal here also deals with how media frames these things when they say women take exception to this. When again, my mind goes, are we talking about Black women? Speaking of Black women, news was made yesterday when MSNBC announced that Rashida Jones is going to be the new president of MSNBC. She is going to be replacing Phil Griffin, who has spent 25 years at the network. The decision to name her president means that she becomes the first African-American to run a major news. I didn't say first Black female executive. In the history of news, no African American has ever run a network news division. Not one. Okay? Not one. And so what's important here, what are we showing here? I don't thank you. What was that? All right. So just keep it on Rashida. So here's the deal with this right here, with what's happening here. If you look at the numbers, at CBS News right now, Kim Godwin is the number 2 at CBS News. Mark Whitaker, who was awful at CNN, I was there. He was the number 2 at CNN as the managing editor. He was awful, okay? And I got no problem saying it. So when you look at these networks, you have never had an African-American who has ascended to run a news network. Now, let me unpack this. Candace. It is absolutely, I'm a huge believer. It's important that we are in all of these places. But what we're talking about here, and this is why this is important. This is important, Candace, because this is an operational role. Okay? And the reason that is important is because for long, if you go back to the Kerner Commission report in 1968, where they examined the race riots in 67, they said there were two nations, one Black, one white, and they called on the media to diversify. So for the longest, African Americans have talked about, the excitement of seeing faces on the air. And so recently they announced that Jonathan Capehart, Tiffany Cross are going to be hosting weekend shows, one on Saturday, one on Sunday on MSNBC. as the Vice President Digital for the National Association of Black Journalists, I have been making the point that it's the operational roles important. Because why is that? Because Rashida Jones as president becomes the person who picks who goes on the air.
Right.
That's what the power is. She will be controlling the daily news meeting in terms of what the direction is for the network, digital and linear, all day. And so, and that's the thing that because see, every day when I'm looking at Deadline.com, I'm looking at Variety and The Hollywood Reporter, and I'm looking at The Wrap, and I'm looking at all of these different positions. They're being hired at Netflix and Warner Media and Disney. I'm looking at the faces, and the reality is this here. There are very few black faces who are hired in these operational roles. Oh, no. I get, so-and-so got a development deal over here at this network, and so-and-so got this deal over here. And let me tell you something right now. And I get it. I need people to understand that people say, oh, yeah, but Stephen A. making $8 million a year at ESPN, and Robin Roberts is making $15 million at Good Morning America. Mm-hmm. Guess what the executives are making? Mm-hmm. And they don't have to worry about hair and makeup and how their nails look and what people are saying about them. And they can do those jobs, man, until they're 70, 75, 80, make it go on. They are operating in the millions. That's where we begin to understand the power dynamic. And so I think for a lot of us, it's great to see the faces being hired on air, which is important. But we had better focus on also challenging these companies to make sure we're getting hired for the power positions, and that's the operational jobs. Candace, go ahead.
Absolutely. Roland, I teach TV, and I put a lot of African-American men and women out in the field to be reporters and to be in newsrooms. They tell me the same thing all the time. I am the O&O in my newsroom, or one of two. By O&O, I mean one and only. So, and generally along my career, that has been the case, that you look up, you're the only one kind of really having the opportunity to advocate to say what goes in the news. Because once something goes in the news, then it becomes part of people's conversation. Then they see it as important. This is a connecting the dots, just like you were saying. If they see it as important, then they're going to, put it on the top of their agenda in terms of what we need to vote upon or what makes, what's right, what's wrong. If people are talking about it, then it's going to be on somebody's agenda. So we need people at the table. And you're right. This is very important because she is going to be making decisions about who goes on air. I think that we've started to see the changes already, as you've seen, because not only are they on air, but as you know, as being the host of a show, you also make decisions. You're at the table. You're coming up with the rundown to say, this stays, this goes at the top of the show. What type of guest do I want? I'd like to have more diversity. We need somebody who's Latino. We need somebody who's Native American. We need all of these things. So this is a big deal and a long time coming. And just like any other position that somebody gets that's big who's African American, we're going to start seeing people change their views about how they see people in the newsroom in roles of power because they are just not there.
This is the thing, frankly, Michael, when we talk about, again, I'm going back to Black power.
Yes.
Black power. It's understanding how it's being used in leverage. The point that Candace just made, I am not just the host of the show. I'm the managing editor of the show. That was the case when I was at TV One as well, which meant I had final say-so on the editorial content of the show. That is the key. Who controls the narrative? What stories are now being emphasized over other stories? What now becomes the messaging? Where we begin to shift resources? What parts of the country do we go to? All of those things matter, and it matters who is sitting in the position because historically in media, the reality, just like in corporate America, white men are in control of media in America.
Well, this is extremely important, brother. And, I talk about how power is the ability to define and shape reality and help other people accept your definition of reality as if it were their own, as Dr. Wade Nobles teaches us. So when we deal with media, and I have a background in media, this influences the conversation. This influences what people are talking about, what they're reading. When you have control over content like this at MSNBC, this influences the snippets, the video clips that show up on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter, things like this. Articles are then written about this as well. This is an opportunity for us to get more of our issues pushed out nationally that influence legislation, that influence policies, et cetera. But it's also important for us to understand we African Americans pay for these positions because these positions are because advertisers, corporations advertise with MSNBC. They take that money and then pay these people for these positions. Well, a lot of these corporations get money from African Americans. So we also have to understand this on this other side is leveraging our economics to push harder for these various positions, not just at MSNBC, but at CNN and things like that as well, because we pay for them also. And this helps us in addition to African-American-owned media. We need that. So I'm not knocking African-American-owned media. I want people to understand me on this.
We need both. We need both.
We need both because we pay for them. We pay for those positions also. So this is extremely important.
So Rena, and again, what I'm looking for people to understand on this is looking for them to understand how you must see this whole deal. Understand, and again, I go back to power. Who is in power? How power is being controlled, how power is being defined. Because now, having Rashida Jones sitting in the position of president, now it's who are the contributors?
That's right.
Who are the correspondents? Who are the executive producers? Who are the senior producers? Who are the line producers? Who are the associate producers? Who are the interns? And again, all those things matter. And now, again, now you're able to now bring that. And this is where also, with a Rashida Jones being in as president, and this is the key, when y'all, because I go back to 2009, when I criticized the Obama White House for the lack of black people in the press office, because I say it is who's a junior now becomes a senior in the next administration. And so what then happens is when a Rashida Jones comes in now as president, she can now install her own team.
That's right.
And so guess what? What if all of a sudden Rashida Jones goes, well, you know what? My vice presidents and my EVPs and my SVPs, I want more black people. I want more Latino people. Now I'm assembling my own team. Now, folks, listen, what that now does is Rashida now is positioning the next wave of senior black and Latino executives where other companies then begin to hire. So if all of a sudden, if her team of 20 execs are mostly white, she comes in and all of a sudden it's now 50, 60% or more people of color because Jeff Zucker's out at CNN, when Warner Media gives him the boot, they're going to be looking to play. Who do we hire? The reason we are never in position for the power positions is because we never ascend to a senior level. And so that's why you got to have black people who, when they do get power, they are committed to saying, I'm not going to be the only one. And they're going to say, I'm going to hold that door open. Damn, hold it open. I'm going to go blow the hinges off. And so now all of a sudden, you're able to build capacity because you now have the power position.
That's right. Media has such an impact on our lives, as we've seen over the years. I mean, it's just grown and grown. And how we see the world is shaped by major networks like MSNBC. So I just want to take a pause here and say that when I saw this news about Rashida, I actually ended up shedding a couple tears. And I really get goosebumps because it's just so big. It's so big. I was celebrating this whole time the Biden-Harris transition. as it goes along, and they're naming women and people of color, and they're really changing what the executive branch looks like because there's been such little diversity. And then I look at news and I see this beautiful Black woman who seriously is going to be a power player that is setting the narrative for years to come. It just makes me so happy having become a part of all this, not as a journalist in any way, but as an opinion contributor, as an expert guest. I have to say, number one, my hat's off to you, Roland. I met you in 2017. I started coming here on your show. And in 2018, I was invited on MSNBC, and I've been going there since June of 2018. You create a pipeline. Media needs a pipeline, and we can't do it unless it's all done this way. So yes, there needs to be Black media, as equally as important as Rashida being named president over at MSNBC. This is all of an above effort, because what it does really at the end of the day, it lifts others as we rise. And because I started coming on this show, I've met so many incredible people that have lifted me in my rise. And I am trying to look back and do the same, because this is the thing. If we don't tell our stories, there's somebody out there telling them for us, and they're not being told authentically. And frankly, then the nation is being done a disservice, because we don't have the nation's diversity, the growing diversity of the American electorate reflected in how our news is given to us. Because people often think that, look, the news is spoon-fed to us through a variety of outlets these days. Some of that's true. Actually, a large bit of that is true. But there remains these fundamental shifts in news. And one of the greatest ones is in how opinion contributors and expert guests like myself routinely join broadcast journalists on air to augment conversation. Right. And that's really important for average Americans to know, is that I'm not out there giving you a factual take. I'm giving you an opinion take. And so when we realize how media works for us, then we became a more engaged, informed citizenry, and the country is better off for it. And just one last thing about lifting others as you rise, because I see what Cesar Conde, who was named the chairman of NBC Universal Group back in May of this year, I see that he's really doing good on his promise and his commitment. He set a goal of having a 50% diverse workforce across his division back in July, and I think this is really monumental with Rashida at the helm there. We're going to see some shifts. It's not just about who's appearing on air, it's about when they're appearing on air as well.
So allow me to make this final point to pick up on what Rita said when she talked about pipeline. When you are intentional with it. And no, go back to the panel, because I'm doing this for a reason. Okay, so you see the announcement, Tiffany Cross getting the show on MSNBC. Here's how she got on TV One. Jamal Simmons hits me up and says, hey, Tiffany Cross has this newsletter called The Beat. He said, man, she'd be great for your show. I was like, all right, cool. So then we booked her. Then we started booking her more and more and more. To Rena's point, all of a sudden, other networks start calling. The exact same thing happened when I put Angela Rye on my show. I just sat there. I got a television on right here. I keep it on. I just saw Paul Butler, legal analyst on MSNBC. Right. Y'all, go to YouTube. You can see Paul Butler, Georgetown professor, when he was on my TV One show, Washington Watch, back in 2009, before MSNBC called. I can go down the list, the number of people, Sir Michael Singleton, Paris Denard. I can go David Swertlick. I mean, we can go. Everybody's talking about. Everybody's talking about Lauren Coates. Man, people. Oh my God, I saw Lauren Coates filling on CNN. Guess where the first show she filled in? My TV One show. What I'm trying to get everybody to understand is the issue is not, yay, a Black executive. The issue is, how do we as African Americans, when we are in a position of power, create the opportunity for others who would ordinarily be ignored to be able to come into the door? I spent 6 years, I need y'all watch and understand. I spent 6 years at CNN, and I watched how contributors got blocked. I watched how great voices never got a shot. And I said, nah, I'm gonna do that. So when I hosted, when I filled in, when I did specials for CNN, no, we gonna put that person on. Y'all, I'm cracking up laughing watching Steve Kornacki getting all this love. I can show y'all when he was on pilots I did at CNN. Guess who was a guest on a pilot I did at CNN? Rachel Maddow. Guess who was on pilots that I did at CNN? Melissa Harris Perry. So what I'm trying to say is, this is where, when we get in positions of power, we must use the power.
That's right.
That's what they've done. Use the power. And when you use the power, and then all of a sudden you begin to infield, that's why I can sit back. You ain't got to shout my name, but when I turn that TV on and I see a black person, Gianno Caldwell's on Fox News right now. Where did he get his start? On TV One. Y'all, that was deliberate. It was deliberate. But the only way that happened is because I had the power to make it happen. And so that's what's key for our audience to understand. We must, when we get the power, we must celebrate it, and then we must use it. Panel, I appreciate it. Thank you so very much. Candace, Michael, Marina, I appreciate it. Coming up next, our Black Business segment. We'll talk with Chef Huda about her line of spices next on Roland Martin Unfiltered.
You cannot fulfill your life if you're not willing to engage in the tactics and strategies that makes your own life grow and helps you to build the community in which you want to live. Voting is a singular method for a people locally and regionally to govern themselves.
When the going got tough in business, David Perdue outsourced American jobs overseas.
In a deposition, Perdue testified he spent most of his career outsourcing. You made a career out of outsourcing? How do you defend that?
Well, defend it, I'm proud of it. When the going got tough in the Senate, Perdue hid in the airport bathroom and even stole someone's cell phone who asked him a tough question.
You stole my property.
When the going got tough with COVID, Perdue hid critical information while selling his own stocks.
Records show that Senator David Perdue bought and sold stock shortly after a private Senate briefing on the virus.
It's not just that you're a crook, Senator. You're attacking the health of the people that you represent.
Now Perdue won't even face his constituents, backing out of debate after debate.
Enough incompetence, deceit, corruption, division. Change has come to Georgia. Change is coming to America.
Georgia needs a real senator, not a chicken Perdue. Midas Touch is responsible for the content of this advertisement.
All right, folks, real quick here. Amazon, I got to tell you this story here. Amazon has removed a particular doll from their store shelves. Let's just say it had a little problem on the race side here. The doll was described as a dolly yearning 14-inch adorable black doll with casual red skirt and colored dirty braid fashion, gorgeous doll for 83+. A Chinese company who has been working with Amazon for less than a year posted the doll for sale on Amazon. Many find it interesting that when the Chinese company posts white dolls for sale, it doesn't place race or the word dirty in the description. Although Amazon has recently removed the doll, many people aren't letting Amazon off the hook. Earlier this year, Amazon had to remove another product from its site. This time, it was a pair of shoes described as nigger brown. Some people have had enough, and some are saying to boycott Amazon as a result. But again, that doll has been yanked. All right, folks, every Tuesday we talk to a black business owner about their company and their wares. And so joining us right now is Chef Huda, who has a new line of spices coming out. So, Huda, what's up with these spices? What's up with this line of spices you got coming out?
Roland, how are you?
Great.
Good, good, good. So I started Just Savor Spices because I wanted to put salt-free options into the universe that were bold in flavor and healthy. Since then, we started the company, and we've been doing wonderful. Everyone's cooking at home right now. We've extended the line to offer traditional salted flavors as well. We also have gourmet salts and gourmet sugars.
All right, okay, hold on. I need you to explain what the hell are gourmet salts. I mean, where I come from, salt is salt. Okay, it's some white damn salt. It come in a bottle. Like now we got gourmet salts.
Listen, I knew you were going to ask. So we have they're basically flavored salts. So we have our Merlot salt, which is flavored with Merlot wine. We have our apple wood smoke, which is one of my favorites. It has a smoky flavor to it. It's beautiful on a lot of different things. And we have ghost pepper salt. So when you say gourmet, it just means that you're working with the highest quality of ingredients, but you're also adding flavors as well.
Okay, so you also got gourmet sugar?
Yes, so we have a maple sugar, which is reduced down, basically maple syrup, and it's beautiful for baking, especially during the holiday season.
All right, so with these spices, first of all, where can people go to actually get them?
So justsavor.com is where we're selling them, and currently we have extended our Black Friday sale. So right now there are items on the website that are 40% off. We have our spice box, which is perfect for holiday season. It includes 3 spices, a cooking class from me, and recipes from me. So it's a wonderful thing, especially because everyone's cooking this holiday season.
So justsavor.com, y'all. This is the website. Go to my iPad, please, and so you'll see the website here. And once you go on here, you'll see all the stuff on here. So when you were putting this together, why? Yeah. Why? What? I mean, were you not satisfied? Like I'm sitting here, explain this: jam and jerk, spicy garlic madness, ghost pepper, sea salt. What the hell? We got international flavors, holiday gift box. Then we got the fire and smoked holiday gift, Cajun kick, southern sweet heat barbecue, applewood smoked sea salt.
Yes. So for me, just like a lot of business owners, we had a catering company, and I also was doing private chef gigs for some of my clients before COVID. And of course, we had to pivot. I started the spice line a couple years ago, but kind of put it on the back burner because we were doing so well with the catering and appearances and things like that. And COVID kind of came in and just said, hey, we have to pivot. And I thought it was a perfect time to bring these options to people and hopefully inspire people to share recipes and share moments with people over food.
All right, then. And so also let people know you're giving 10% to charity?
Yes, absolutely. So part of my brand has always been to give back to our communities. So every purchase, we give back about 10% to different charities that we work with. I'm an ambassador for American Heart Association. That's one of the reasons that we started with the salt-free line, because I think it's really important that we all do something that's near and dear to our heart, especially in this trying time.
All right, then. Chef Huda, we certainly appreciate it. Congratulations on this line. You're right. Everybody has to pivot. And yes, a whole bunch of people who ain't got no clue when it comes to cooking. And they need as much help as they can. Praise the Lord. I've been cooking since I was 8, baking since I was 7, so I'm good. Yeah. Mom and Daddy handle their business, so we straight, but you're absolutely right. We appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for having me. Happy holidays.
All right. Thank you very much. Hey, y'all, when I was talking about, of course, Rashida Jones, I had it up. I did not go to my iPad. Go to my iPad now, please. Give a shout out to Monica Richardson. She also, on the same day Rashida Jones was named as the president of MSNBC, Monica Richardson was named as the first black African-American to lead the Miami Herald newspaper. So I wanted to be sure to shout out Monica there as well. All right, folks, that is it for us. If you want to support what we do here at Roland Martin Unfiltered, the segment we just did there with Chef Huda is a perfect example of what I'm talking about pipeline and power, and that is the ability to be able to. So we created that segment specifically to allow black businesses to be able to come on and talk about their particular products. And so people send me emails, and so we take a look at those and we see who we have on. Last week we had the folks, of course, with the face shields, and so I got an email from the CEO who said that man, they got a number of orders came in as well. Folks are gifting these things. And so this is why we do what we do. We are independent. No corporation owns us. I don't have Comcast's money. I ain't got Byron Allen's money. I don't have Robert Smith's money. I don't have Viacom, AT&T, Verizon money. We are building something here that we're able to control the narrative and actually build capacity. Okay, our goal is real simple. Our goal is we want to be able to build this, not just one show, but multiple shows, have much larger staff, be able to cover more things across the country. So your support is vital. If you want to join our Bring the Funk fan club, you can do so by going to Cash App, $RM Unfiltered, PayPal.me/R Martin Unfiltered, Venmo.com/RM Unfiltered. You can also send us a money order to New Vision Media, Inc., 1625 K Street Northwest, Suite 400, Washington, D.C., 2006. And so we ask that you do that because, again, we want to build a strong Black-owned platform where we are in control of the narrative and control our destiny. Tomorrow's on the show. Check out my John Ossoff interview that I did when I was in Georgia over the weekend. Looking forward to that. Y'all folks have an absolutely great day. Talk to you later. Hi!